Only me, and it's our next lesson on fractions. I hope you had a great weekend, and we're going to keep on with fractions for the next couple of weeks, but today we're going to look at mixed numbers. And all that really means is, you know how sometimes when you're talking about, I don't know, maybe how old you are, and you might say something like, I'm 8.5. And what a mixed number is a whole number and a fraction, and a proper fraction. So for instance, say you said I'm 8.5, you've got the 8 years, your whole number, and then you've got the half, which is your fraction. So if you look at the screen, you've got 3 children there, Jamila, Jamie and Lee, and they have created like an age chart at the top. It looks a bit like a number line, but it's an age chart because they're talking about their ages. And you've got Jamila going, I'm 7.25, and Jamie's going, I'm 8.25, and Lee is going, I am 7.75. And so this is a perfect example of a mixed number. We've got 3 mixed numbers here: 7.25, 8.25, and 7.75. And if you think about it, you do that without thinking, really. So mixed numbers we use all the time when you're talking about ages, or maybe when you're talking about cooking, or I don't know, sharing pizzas, like 2.5 pizzas, for instance. Because it doesn't always, we don't always just talk about halves or quarters or 3/4. So anyway, so in your head today, just think, right, we're doing mixed numbers. So that's a whole number and a proper fraction. So let's go back to our screen and have a look at Jamila, Jamie and Lee. And the question is, where will Lee's age go on the age chart? Because if you look, and the age chart, like I said, is this sort of number line above them, Jamila's already plotted her age, 7.25, and Jamie has as well 8.25. So where do you think Lee's age would go? And he's telling us he's 7.75. So, like always, pause me, try and work it out before I tell you the answer, because it's always worth having a go. So let's think about this. He is 7.75. And I always think the most efficient way to place a mixed number on a number line is to count in whole numbers initially, and then count on from this number in the appropriate fractional amount. So he's 7.75. So the whole number is 7. So I'm going to go straight to number 7 on this age chart, and I'm going to count on from there. And what you need to do really is to work out what these little lines represent. Okay, it's like, what's the intervals, okay, between 7 and the next whole number, because that's going to tell you the denominator, the number on the bottom of the fraction. So let's see how many jumps we make. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's 4 intervals between 7 and 8. So that means the denominator is 4. So we're talking about quarters. So let's see, if we start at 7, our first jump is 7.25. And we can check that because that's how tall, how old Jamila is. And she's told us she's 7.25. So that's right. So 7, 7.25, 7.75, 7.75. And that's where we want to get to, isn't it? Because that's how old Lee is. So let's see if we are right. I'm going to flick it onto the next screen where I've just taken that age chart, and we are right. Here he is. So Lee is 7.75. So on the age chart, he would fall just before the 8. And then the other part of that question was, so who is the oldest? Well, we now know that Jamie is the oldest, because Jamie is 8.25, and we can see that quite clearly now we've plotted it on our age chart, which really looks like a number line to me, if I'm honest. But then there was another part to that question. Let's go back. So the other part was, how much older than Jamila is Lee? How much older than Jamila is Lee? So what we're trying to work out is, what is the difference between this point, 7.25, and 7.75? Now remember, we've already worked out that each interval is worth 1/4. So 7.25 we're going to start with. Then we've got 1 quarter, 2 quarters. So Lee is 2 quarters of a year older than Jamila. There are 2 quarters between Jamila and Lee. So 2 quarters, some of you might know, is the same as saying a half. So you can either say 2 quarters or a half. Lee is half of a year older than Jamila. So I hope you got that right, Willow class. Now, I'm going to move on and we're going to work through 3 questions together. And it'd be really good if you could try and have a go at this before I tell you the answer. And the question is, what numbers are the arrows pointing to? So I've got 3 number lines, all starting at 0, all finishing at 4, but I've got 3 arrows pointing at different points on the number lines. And I want you to try and work out what numbers are the arrows pointing to. So have a go and pause me if you need to. So now let me talk you through it. So I always think the best way, sort of the most efficient way to do this, is to locate the whole number first, okay? And then to calculate the size of the fraction, okay? Because remember, we said a mixed number is a whole number and a proper fraction. So we look at this first number line here, and we go straight to number 3, because we know that the whole number is going to be 3, because the arrow falls after the 3, but between the 4. So it's 3 and something. But what is that something? So remember, what you need to do is you need to work out what fractions are we talking about. Are we talking about quarters? Are we talking about thirds? Are we talking about fifths? What are we talking about? And in order to work that out, you need to work out what these intervals are, what they represent. So let's count how many steps we make. So 1, 2, 3. So that is telling us that the fraction, the denominator, is a 3. So therefore it is a third. Thirds we're looking at. How many thirds are there? Okay, so we've got 3 and 1/3, 3 and 2/3. So my guess is that that arrow is pointing to 3 and 2/3. So let's see if we are right. And we are. There you go. There is our mixed number. It's 3 is the whole number and 2/3 is the proper fraction. So 3 and 2/3. Let's look at this next one. So again, we're going to go straight to number 2, because we know this arrow falls between 2 and 3. So the whole number is going to be 2 and something. So let's work out what these lines represent. So how many jumps can we make between them? 1, 2, 3, 4. So the denominator is going to be 4. So that means we're working in quarters. And how many jumps do we make? 2 and 1 quarter, 2 and 2 quarters, 2 and 3 quarters. Shall we see if we are right? 2 and 3 quarters. Brilliant. And remember, when you're writing a mixed number, your whole number needs to be really quite big, almost the same size as your fraction. And then the last one. So again, have a go before me if you possibly can. So you locate the whole number on the number line first that you're thinking about. And the red arrow is pointing here. So I know it's going to be 1 and something. And then you calculate the size of each interval. Okay. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I now know that my denominator is going to be 5. So I know we're working in fifths. How many fifths have I got? Well, I've got 1 and 1/5, 1 and 2/5, 1 and 3/5, 1 and 4/5. Shall we see if we're right? 1 and 4/5. Yes, brilliant. Well done, Willow class. What I'd like you to do today, if you've got time, is to have a go at your Power Maths books 3B and see if you can turn to page 140 and have a go at 140, 141, and 142. And as always, I am so proud of you, Willow class. We all are, and I just hope that you're enjoying this, because actually I know it's hard being at home, and I know sometimes it's tricky sort of not being in class or whatever, but you're all doing so brilliantly. So keep it up, Willow class, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care.